It's like deja vu all over again. Here we go. Cubs are seemingly out of the race. They have a pretty good trade piece in Cody Bellinger, the former NL MVP and last year's comeback player of the year in the NL. And it's time to decide what they're going to do. The old Chinese proverb says, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And I feel like that's where we are right now with this Cubs team. We're going to talk about that, what Cody Bellinger could bring back to the Cubs, and the 5 best teams that match what the Cubs want and that would have interest in Bellinger. All that right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Thanks for being here, gang. I wish it was under better circumstances. Wouldn't it be great if the Cubs were in first and we were actually going out to make trades to make the team better? Yeah, but that's not the case. Maybe next year. All right, let's get this thing started. Go Cubs. What do you say, everybody? Mick Gillispie here for the Cubs Baseball channel, and let's get into this situation right up on the screen. There it is, Cody Bellinger, Cubs' best trade piece. And I really do think he's the best trade piece that the Cubs have. You're talking about the 2019 NL MVP. He's won a World Series. He struggled. He came back from that struggle, was last year's NL Comeback Player of the Year. And he's a guy that you could go out and trade for right now with, I mean, look, you're going to have to pay the $30 million unless the Cubs pick up part of that. There's an option for next year. If he thinks that he could get a long-term contract, he's going to opt out anyway, but that's $30 million. And for a star player, you know, that's not too bad. And then the year after that, what is it, like $20 million or something? So it's a step down from where it is right now, but it's in that neighborhood. I forget the exact number, but you get the point. This guy is a star when he's doing his thing, and he's got the potential to be able to carry a team through the postseason and to win a World Series. So if you go out and make this deal, you really feel like your franchise has a chance to win a World Series. The problem with the Cubs is that there's just not a whole lot of production outside of Bellinger, other than Ian Happ, who is ice cold, then he's red hot, then he's ice cold, then he's red hot. It's like, his big days, he puts all of his hits together, right? And then has those big games, and he's quiet, but not saying anything bad about Happ. Now, Happ's another one of your big trade pieces. He's got to waive a no trade clause to be able to make a deal, but he's shown the ability to help a team win. I'd say other guys to keep an eye on. Nico Horner, obviously one of those players that you're going to hear. He is a really good player. He's under control. But the other part of it, too, is that the Cubs have guys in the organization that can slide in and play second base. You know, it's not like catcher where they don't have anything. They have a lot of infield, middle infield depth down in double and triple A. So you could slide one of those guys in eventually. That may even be better than Nico long-term, like James Triantos, like Matt Shaw, who's showing some power in double A right now. So we'll see how that works out. And these are guys that you might have traded a couple of weeks ago before the Cubs went in. And really, I don't want to say they went into the tank. They stayed in the tank when we thought they might be able to turn things around. But at this point, I think it's time to focus on the deals you can make to win in the future. And this is certainly one of them. Another guy to keep an eye on, Jameson Taillon. I'm going to do a video about that. So make sure you check out that video as well, because I think he's a piece with where he's at right now. If I'm the Cubs, I'm going to get that payroll off the books, just like this payroll, and try to get some young players. So here we go. Cody Bellinger, as of right now, and I don't know what he's going to do by the time you watch this video, but he's hitting .266. He's got 9 home runs. He's got 37 runs batted in. Obviously, he had the great start to the season, had the slow start to the season, picked it up, looked really good, then had the collision with the brick wall. And the brick wall won that collision. And he went on the IL. What was it? Cracked ribs or fractured ribs or whatever you want to call it. Came back, and he's been okay. I mean, he's been consistent, but he hasn't been the player that was leading the Cubs last year to wins every day. He's just a good player on a bad team, right? Career numbers for him, though, this is if you take his composite, right? You say 162 games of Cody Bellinger, according to the website Baseball Reference. They have him as a guy who is, over the course of 162, averages a 258 batting average, a 335 on base percentage, a 286 slugging percentage, and an 821 OPS. Averages 32 home runs, 95 runs batted in, and that's over the course of 162 games, right? So that's 6 years with the Dodgers, 2 years with the Cubs. That is star stuff right there. I mean, look, you do that over the course of 20 years in the big leagues, and you go to the Hall of Fame, and I'm not saying Bellinger's there, but I'm saying, like, he's a really good player. And that's why you got to look at what you're getting back in a deal for him and make sure it's the right deal. We were talking about some of these same teams last year when it comes to Cody Bellinger. And, and then eventually the Cubs got hot. Now, I want to play this, or I want to show you this. His quote a couple of days ago when he was asked about being on the trade block. He said, feels like it's a little different this year, but just like last year, I'm definitely not going to think about it. Like everything, it's a distraction to what you need to accomplish. I won't think about it. Just take it day by day. That was Cody Bellinger. All right. So what he's saying is it feels different than last year. And I think the reason is because last year they decided that they weren't going to let that team get broke up and they got hot. This year, I don't know that they have the ability to decide that. It just doesn't feel the same way. Although I was surprised last year. I also feel like the fact that they didn't make the playoffs last year, the fact that they've been in the tank now for like 2 months, you can't take the risk if you're the front office of getting lucky or buying into these guys and then they don't make the playoffs again, right? I just don't think you can do that. And like I said before, shame on you for fooling me last year because you guys didn't get it done. You fell apart down the stretch. Would be shame on me if I buy into it and you don't make the playoffs again, right? So top contenders for a Cody Bellinger trade. And I'm going to start right with the World Series champion. No, not the San Francisco Giants, the Texas Rangers. It's just Bruce Bochy. Every time I say Bruce Bochy, I want to say, hey, he won 3 World Series with the Giants, but he won 1 with the Rangers, right? So the Rangers, who last year, ironically enough, were rumored to have interest in a Cody Bellinger, are right back in that same spot again this year. And last year, the Rangers ended up getting hot, getting into the postseason, and then obviously they ran away with the playoffs. No one could beat them. I mean, especially when they were on the road, they were just warriors and they took care of business. And they're a team that has, I want to say they've underperformed a little bit so far this year. They're 42-48, which really isn't that much of a different record than what the Cubs are sporting right now at 42-49. But they have the proven commodity of saying, hey, we won the World Series last year. And when you look at the AL and the wild card race, they're still 7.5 games back of the Boston Red Sox for the last wild card spot. Yet, unlike the Cubs, you're hearing that they're interested in possibly making a trade. And maybe they would do that for Cody Bellinger. Plus, you get the next year if he decides to stay in, and then the year after that. I don't know. Seems awful risky to me. But the fact that the Rangers have won puts them in a spot where you kind of have that leeway where you're like, you know what? We haven't hit yet, but we're going to hit. So maybe we're going to make a deal like this. I don't know. It seems like a little bit of a stretch. So they're number 5. Number 4 on my list is the Atlanta Braves, the Bravos. Now, they won a couple years ago, the World Series, and they made some trades, including one for a very similar guy, a former Dodger that the Cubs had that was left-handed named Jock Peterson. Remember, then Jock Peterson and another former Cub, Jorge Soler, went to Atlanta and helped them win the World Series, right? So could that happen again for the Braves? Now, the Braves have been a little bit disappointing this year, and partly because of injuries. Ronald Acuna is injured right now and out for the season, right? So you need somebody to come in there and help Atlanta. The Braves generate some offense. They've had a lackluster offense this season, the Braves, and that's been one of the things that has held them back. Now they're still second place behind Philadelphia. If you get Bellinger, that also keeps Philly from getting him, which kind of previewing a team that I might talk about here in a second. Austin Riley and Matt Olson haven't played nearly as well as they did a year ago, and maybe that's because they don't have Acuna in the lineup. Bellinger brings in that experience. Oh, and don't forget, you got injured Michael Harris. Bellinger could play, wherever he wants to play in the outfield and could also play first base. You don't need him with Matt Olson, but DH in the outfield spot, plus you keep him away from Philly. Do the Braves have the prospects to make this move? I don't know. Their system is a little bit down compared to where it's been in the past. Obviously, winning the World Series a few years ago and all that, but maybe you muster it up. I mean, all it takes is the right player or two, and you could get that done. The Braves are on the cusp. They're a team that I still think has the potential to win the World Series. They had the great season a year ago, and then they got to the postseason with the best record in baseball, and they fell apart, right? They had those days off. It didn't help out. And, a lot of Braves fans were kind of like, hey, how is it that the wild card teams have, in the postseason, the easier path just because they're playing every day. They're not sitting. A lot of those teams that kind of have that dud the year before will come back and there'll be a lot less pressure. And then all of a sudden they make a run. That could be the Braves this year. And having Cody Bellinger in their mix could help them get there. Another guy that they may be interested in is Ian Happ. He seems to be a better fit for them. Could play the corner outfield spot, switch hit, and I could just see him fitting in well with Atlanta. So maybe the Cubs and the Braves make a deal. It's not for Bellinger. It's for Ian Happ. Another team that's listed is the San Francisco Giants, which is kind of surprising to me because here's another team that I don't think is very good. Now, they're only 3.5 games back of San Diego for the final wild card spot, and the Cubs are 5.5 back for that same spot right now. So, I mean, it's not like those two teams aren't really that close. And we saw the Giants. I've seen the Giants. I saw them at the Rickwood game. I saw them play the Cubs. They're not that good. As a matter of fact, they're not better than the Cubs, which is amazing to me that they would actually consider going out and making a deal to try to get into the postseason, whereas the Cubs feel like they're kind of in a helpless spot here. And I think it's just because of the Cubs' recent history and how things went last year. Now, the Giants have a different drive than the Cubs, right? Their arch rival Los Angeles Dodgers went out last year in the offseason and this year, and they went out and they stocked up, right? They got the best player in the world, Ohtani. They went out and got pitching with Yamamoto and was it Glasnow and all these guys. They went out and made these moves, and the Dodgers have kind of made it a habit of being in first place. And, for the Cubs, it's kind of been like, well, I mean, you keep waiting on them not to be in last, but they're 11 games back. The Dodgers right now are 7.5 games up on the Padres, and they're 11 up on the Giants. But the Giants are looking not just at the short-term fix for this deal, but it would be a long-term for them as well. They could have Cody Bellinger, who would be a good piece for them. It gives them someone that could play first base and play the outfield and DH. And Bob Melvin, I'm sure, would love to have that guy in the lineup. So, we'll see what happens. The Giants lineup, nothing in that lineup scares you. Jorge Soler can still, smash some balls. But I don't look at that lineup and go, hey, man, there's guys that you really have to worry about. You put Cody Bellinger in there, it makes the entire lineup better. So, and I think that the Giants would be fine with, the 3-year, $80 million contract if he didn't opt out of it. And if he did opt out, I got a feeling, remember, they were in the mix for that, deal with Bellinger last year. Maybe they're the team that goes out there and says, okay, we'll end up just signing this guy if he fits. And he's a former Giant. So, a former Dodger. So, as a Giant, he's going to want to beat the Dodgers. There'll probably always be that little right there in his side. So look for the Giants. I would not be surprised. They've had some injuries this year that have cost them. and they have a great fan base. They spend like a big market team. They expect to win, and I could see this happening, which just kind of like the Rangers, right there around the same record as the Cubs, but just a different mentality. Number two is the Philadelphia Phillies. This team, to me, makes the most sense to make a blockbuster trade. They're all in right now. I mean, you look at the lineup and the roster, and I know they have some injuries, with Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, but Nick Castellanos is on this team. TJ Realmuto's on this team. I mean, they've got star power all over the place, but at center field, they stink, right? So, I mean, this would take maybe the weakest part of the team. Johan Rojas, he hasn't been any good. Who's the other guy they got out there? They're just not that good. But you put Cody Bellinger in center, and now all of a sudden, that's a pretty formidable lineup, right? They all get healthy at the same time. This team last year, I don't know what happened to them when they got into the series against Arizona and went to Arizona. All of a sudden, they just forgot how to hit. And they lost a couple of really tough games, and then they ended up losing the series. I think if they go to the World Series, they probably win it. They were that good. And the window for these things isn't open very long. So, yeah, it's $80 million or whatever you got to pay him prorated. There's a chance that you're going to be stuck with that salary, but I don't know that having him for 2 years at that rate is going to be that bad. I mean, yeah, you're going to be over the threshold and probably that, but you'll make it up because this team could really go on a run. I mean, they would be in position to win the World Series this year and honestly to be a big time contender for next year as well. Now, on the Cubs side of things, a lot of the people that see these deals and talk about them say, hey, what about Eduardo Tate as the guy that you get back in return, right? And maybe that's it. The Phillies number 8 prospect is a catcher. The Cubs are in desperate need of help from behind the plate. It's an area where they just haven't had any success going out and signing guys. You saw Yan Gomes was so bad, they got rid of him. I mean, they signed a bunch of catchers right at the end of spring training that had they were like 4A guys, big league experience. But they didn't sit. Miguel Amaya, to me, is a third stringer. He's probably a guy that'll see some more time in AAA before it's all said and done. They went out and got the guy from the Mets, but they need some talent. The Cubs do at that catcher spot. So maybe that is a real possibility. All right, number one. Oh, and one last thing on the Phillies is you keep them away from the Braves. Same thing's the other way around, right? Finally, the New York Yankees. And I see this as being the place that this guy ends up. I mean, the Yankees had one of the best farm systems. Now, they traded a bunch of guys to get Juan Soto. Why wouldn't they trade a bunch more guys to get Cody Bellinger? I mean, this is a Yankees organization that expects to spend money. They don't care if they're going over the cap as long as they're winning. And they were winning. And then all of a sudden they started losing. And Baltimore just kept kind of being consistent. So now, I don't want to say that people are worried, but the Yankees are all of a sudden 3 games back. And they've won 3 of their last 10 games. And they need some help. And the best way to get that help would be going out and getting Cody Bellinger. And they could possibly throw one of their farmhands in there. Agustin Ramirez, who's a top 20 prospect and a catcher in AAA, right? I haven't seen the guy play, so I don't know what kind of top 20 that is. And what's odd about catching is that you'll see guys listed as catchers, honestly, like Moises Ballesteros, who really didn't catch much until this year. I mean, he was listed as a catcher. He comes to AA and he's not catching hardly at all. He's playing first base and DHing. And then once in a while he's catching. But the problem is to be able to catch, you got to catch every day. You can't play first base and DH because it's not hitter. It's called catcher, being behind the plate. So now with Pablo Aliendo, the Cubs, probably the Cubs' best catching prospect, injured, Ballesteros is playing a lot. And, if you watch him, there's pass balls and wild pitches that he should be blocking, but he does some things well. It's just going to take time that they could have spent in the past working on that they're doing now. And I'm sure they had the reasons for that. But the Yankees would absolutely love to have Bellinger. There's definitely some smoke around the possibility of that. You got Giancarlo Stanton on the injured list, Anthony Rizzo on the injured list. So there's a spot in the outfield and there's a spot at first base where Bellinger could play. Trent Grisham has been guy playing center. He's okay. He's just an okay player. He's not great. He's not terrible, but he's not Cody Bellinger, right? And then everybody knows about what Stanton, what Aaron Judge is doing right now. I mean, he's just having one of those years where, hey, just put one more guy on base for Judge, and and he'll get the job done. So I don't think the Yankees could just throw the catching prospect out there to get Bellinger with the Cubs, but I think that there's definitely a possibility here. I feel like this is the best fit for both teams. I feel like the Yankees are an organization that expects to win, that wants to win, and knows the price of winning. They haven't won a World Series in a while, and a while for them, is like 10 years or whatever, right? I mean, 15 years, I how long it's been, but they like to win them at least every other year. I mean, that's impossible, but they've won more than any other team by far, and they have a team this year that could possibly do that. So maybe that, or maybe they go and they bundle, right? They say, hey, we'll take James Tyone and we'll take Cody Bellinger and we'll give you our whole minor league system. Just pick 10 guys you want. I mean, it would not surprise me with the Yankees because they're close. They know they're close. And as they start to kind of slide back, I'm sure they're going, hey, we don't want to go there again. Let's go all Steinbrenner and win this thing. And besides that, how about the George Costanza bobblehead dolls? Did you see those? Absolutely fire. People they were sleeping at Yankee Stadium to get one of those. All right, final thing is that's our list, our top 5 list. I didn't have Cleveland in there. And, I love reading stuff from all the different Cubs publications, including Cub Insider. I think they do a great job. And they put out a list. It was like the 3 best destinations. Evan Massey did it. And he had the Guardians at number 1. Look, the Guardians don't trade. They're just not going to trade. They may trade their good players away right now for payroll and stuff. I mean, they somehow figure out a way to get into the playoffs and lose every year, which is really phenomenal. Like they're not good enough to win it, and they don't do anything to make themselves good enough to win it. I mean, they did in 2016, and they were game back. They could have won it, but they got beat by the Cubs. Since then, it just feels like they're that organization that we're going to do something here. We're going to build a team. And then if we get to this spot here, when everyone expects us to go out and make a blockbuster to make the team better, we're going to trade away our best players and get your minor leaguers so that we're still pretty good in a couple years, but not good enough to win it. I'm just not taking them seriously. I just don't. I kind of feel like they're the same as Tampa Bay and Oakland, where they've mastered the ability to win the regular season. But when it comes to that from marathon to sprint phase, their sprint is more like another S word. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with us here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Give me your top 5 list. I want to hear what you think. You disagree with me? Maybe you got Cleveland at the top of that list. Okay. Thanks for hanging, and we'll do it again really soon. And hopefully the Cubs pull off a massive deal. Give me the whole Yankees minor league system for Bellinger and Tyone. We'll take it. Go Cubs.